Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Megan Hansen, Director of Alumni Relations, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for our Lunch and Learn series today. I know we're in uncertain times right now, and I just want to say thank you to our healthcare professionals and first responders who are fighting daily to keep us safe. As an alumni community, it's great that we're all here able to come together, and I hope that each of you and your family members remain safe and healthy in these coming days. Just a few reminders about our webinar. So everyone, all participants are muted, and we're going to use the Q&A section to take questions during the talk and at the end. So if you want to post your question there throughout the talk, please feel free. And at the end, we'll read them for Lindsey. Your questions are visible to the entire group. We also will be monitoring the section. So if you have any questions or technical difficulties staff can address, you can message us there. And so that's a little bit about the webinar. So I'd like to introduce Lindsey. I have the pleasure of working with Lindsey on campus and also in her role on the alumni board as secretary. She's a 2009 graduate from Roger Williams and is an assistant professor and the scholarly communications librarian here at Roger, where she's been leading the open educational resource adoption, revision, and creation since 2016. She concentrates heavily on the pedagogy collaboration with faculty. She also co-chairs the Rhode Island Open Textbook Initiative Steering Committee and is a fellow for the Open Education at the New England Board of Higher Education. She was awarded a 2019 through 2020 OER Research Fellowship to conduct research on undergrad student awareness of copyright, fair use, and open licensing as it pertains to their participation in OER projects. Welcome, Lindsey.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'd like to welcome you to my kitchen / my son's classroom / playroom. I know we're all in similar situations working from home. So today I have the pleasure of giving you a little bit of background on what we're doing at the university with open educational resources. But during these times, these resources also extend to you, to everyone, to your children, to anyone who's interested in lifelong learning. So towards the end of the presentation, I hope to share with you some really excellent resources that I hope you can take away today and make some use of. So I am going to share my screen right now, so bear with me while I get that up and running. And I mentioned to Megan, if anyone has any questions mid-presentation, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. And if it's timely, Megan will stop me and I will hopefully answer your question. So to start, I want to share, like I said, the work that we're doing at the university with open educational resources. And to do that, I have to give you a little bit of background on why we're doing this work. So the cost of textbooks have risen significantly since the late 70s. You can see from this chart, it's actually the cost of supplies, books and supplies have risen enormously over overall inflation. So students are paying more out of pocket for their learning materials that are often required in their courses. And the average student at an institution like Roger Williams, they're paying about $1,200 per year out of pocket in textbook costs, right? So that's an enormous amount of money that oftentimes families just aren't expecting. You know, they pay their tuition, they get their kid to college, and then, you know, the student says, oh my gosh, I have to buy all these books, and each semester I'm, you know, footing $600, and that can be a real burden. So in 2016, Governor Raimondo challenged the institutions of higher ed in Rhode Island, and there are 11 of us, to save Rhode Island students $5 million over the course of 5 years in textbook costs. And to do this, we were going to use openly licensed textbooks. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, what is an openly licensed textbook. And so we are entering year 4 of that challenge. And as Megan mentioned, I am the co-chair of that steering committee. And we have made significant progress, and we are on target to meet our goal of $5 million in year 5. And you can see we've impacted 35,000 students, almost 36,000. So we're doing really great work. And I'm really happy to say that Roger Williams has emerged as a leader in the state of this work. And I'll talk a little more about that in a second. Let's see, trying to get to my next slide. Sometimes it's a little slow, so bear with me. Yep, went a little too far. Okay, so I just wanted to show you what happens to a student when they can't afford their textbook. Okay, so Florida Virtual Campus runs this study every 2 years. And what they've found is that 64% of students don't purchase the required textbook in their course because they can't afford it, right? That's a huge barrier to learning. So, and it's also extremely inequitable. So if you can't, you can't learn from a textbook that you can't afford, right? And not only that, but students report taking fewer courses. I've talked to students on our campus that have reported actually switching their major completely because certain majors, business, for example, the textbooks are extremely expensive, as opposed to books in the humanities tend to be less expensive because a lot of those materials are in the public domain. They're free to access anyway, but certain majors cost more money to be a student in. So I did a survey, a really informal survey in 2018 of our students, just by kind of walking around the library and asking students, hey, did you not buy a textbook because you couldn't afford it? And 73% of those students said, yeah, I actually didn't buy one or more of my required textbooks because it was too expensive for me. And I think, I don't have the data in front of me, but I think it was like 15.9% of those students said, I did buy the textbook, but I went without purchasing something else really important in my life just to be able to afford that. So we're talking about, paying a bill, paying their cell phone bill, or buying groceries for the week, right? They had to make a choice between getting the textbook so they could pass their class and cost of living expenses, which just really isn't fair to ask our students to be doing that. But this problem is getting more and more prevalent. So that brings us kind of back to this idea I was talking about, the Rhode Island challenge to save students money by using openly licensed textbooks. And so open textbooks, which we kind of refer to them as, are a piece of this open educational resources. So we in this field just refer to it as OER. So OER are completely free to use teaching and learning resources that are in the public domain or have an open license granting users permissions to reuse, revise, remix, redistribute, and retain the resource at hand. I know that probably means nothing to most of you, but basically it's a resource. So I like to use textbooks as an example because they're very relatable. Everyone understands the concept of the textbook. So it's a textbook that is both free, so the student is not paying any money for it. So oftentimes that means it's a digital resource, right? They're accessing it online. But it also comes with a set of permissions that allows them to share and to keep that resource in perpetuity. So if you think about, like, if you buy, for example, a DVD, which I know is kind of an antiquated example at this time, there are certain copyright restrictions on that DVD, right? You're not allowed to rip a copy and sell it to your friends or even give it to your friends, right? That would be breaking copyright permissions. It's the same exact thing with a textbook from a publisher. It's copyrighted. Students are not allowed to, scan the entire textbook and email the PDF to their friends so their friend doesn't have to pay for it. That would be a copyright violation that has legal implications. So these resources actually have permissions that allow you to do all of those things, right? So that's kind of the difference. So when we talk about OER, we're talking about a resource that is both free and it comes with those set of permissions that traditional copyrighted resources just don't have. But this work is really more than just about saving our students money. A recent study out of the University of Georgia showed that OER, so that could be a textbook or any kind of resource, improved the course grades at greater rates, and it also decreased the drop, fail, or withdraw rates at greater rates for Pell recipient students, part-time students, and populations that are historically underserved by higher education, including students of color. Right, so when we're thinking about equitable access, OER benefits all students by saving them money, right? But it also has this added layer of benefiting students that are historically, underserved by higher ed. So students that don't normally have access to these materials, that have a harder time navigating the higher ed system, right? So I just wanted to give some other examples because I've been talking about textbooks a lot, but I've also mentioned, it's teaching and learning resources in general. So OER could be a full course. So if you've ever heard of MIT OpenCourseware, MIT has openly licensed all of their courses that they teach at the institution, and they've put them all online for anyone to access. And I'm going to show you that in a little bit. So it can be an entire course. It could be a textbook. It could be a website that has an open license. It could be a YouTube video that has an open license, an audio file, a photograph. Teachers could put up their lesson plans and syllabi. It really could be anything that is considered a teaching or learning resource that has an open license for sharing on it. So I just wanted to kind of tie this back to Roger Williams and what we're doing here at the institution to kind of promote using these resources. So we have this program called the Faculty Fellows, and the OER Faculty Fellows, basically faculty apply to be, a fellow for the year. They commit to getting rid of their textbook that was a traditional publisher textbook that's copyrighted, that might be expensive, and they work with the library to identify a resource that is both free and has an open license. And so we have kind of different tiers of participation. So faculty members can either create their own textbook, they can revise an existing open textbook, or they can actually, just adopt something that exists, or they can get their students engaged in creating this resource. Can everyone see the slide? Does it still say, oh, all right, here we go. Sorry, it was taking a little while to catch up. So this is one of my favorite examples of a faculty member of ours, and some of you might know Paul. Paul is a professor of biology, and he created an Introduction to Oceanography textbook. He was one of our first fellows, and he came to me and said, I haven't been able to find a textbook in this discipline that I really like. Sometimes I end up assigning two, and often, that's really unfair to ask my students to buy two different textbooks, right? That's an extra financial burden for them, but it's also frustrating, right? They're flipping back and forth between two textbooks. So he said, I'd really like to just write my own textbook because I know the learning outcomes that I want my students to achieve, and I want it to be all in one resource, and I don't want them to pay for it. So Paul created this wonderful textbook, Introduction to Oceanography, and that book is able to be downloaded in multiple file formats. So any user, and I mean any user, this is on the web, it's out there, and it's in the Open Textbook Library, which is a repository where people can go and search for different disciplines and locate it. And so Paul's textbook is actually in the Open Textbook Library, and it's been in there for about a year. And he got this really nice email from a faculty member, I think it was last summer. And, you know, she said, "Hi, Paul, I'm going to be using your text as the primary text for my introductory oceanography class. I cannot quite imagine how much work it takes to create and manage a book like this, and I'm very grateful." And Dana is exactly right. So these resources are free for our students and for our users, but they're not free to create and maintain. They are definitely a labor of love. And while, you know, our institution gave Paul a little bit of money as an OER fellow, you know, it's definitely, he's not doing it for the money. I'll just let you know. So I just wanted to show you quickly this really cool geomap that we made. So Paul's textbook has been adopted globally at both institutions of higher ed and high schools as the primary text for, you know, whether it's an oceanography class or some kind of science class. And so I just wanted to show you the kind of, you know, expansion that one work of scholarship, one open textbook right here created in Bristol, Rhode Island, the effect, the impact it's had on thousands of students globally. And I created this geomap yesterday just to kind of plot for my own kind of visual interest. But this list of institutions that have adopted is growing all the time. And I can't wait to see how much more it expands. So I just wanted to show you that quickly. So let's see, moving on. So that is an example of creation. So Paul created that textbook from scratch. And I also mentioned revision. So Professor Teal Rothschild, she teaches sociology. She took an existing open textbook that was published at Rice University. They have a program called OpenStax, and they focus primarily on publishing general education, the lower level intro class textbooks. So she used the OpenStax textbook, the Introduction to Sociology, and she said, you know what, I really like a lot of this book, but there are certain things that I just don't cover in my class, and I always hate that students kind of get lost in the things they don't need to be looking at to be successful in my class. So we worked with Teal to really revise and customize this textbook to make it her own. And the only way we were able to do that is because this book has an open license that allows us to do that, right? Those copyright restrictions don't apply. And I just really wanted to share this student quote because it really hits the nail on the head on why we do this work. So I don't know if any of you know Sam. He is a fabulous student, and he was just voted in as Student Senate President for the incoming academic year. And Sam was a student in Teal's class a few years ago, and he said, having access to the course textbook right from my computer improved my learning experience in that course. It set me up for success, knowing that the material in the online textbook would be covered since it was specifically designed for Dr. Rothschild's course. So that kind of hits on that point that I was saying. You know, a lot of times textbooks, faculty end up kind of just teaching to the textbook, like whatever's in there. They just kind of say, okay, we're going to talk about this. And they lose sight of like the course learning outcomes, what they really want their students to learn. And so the flexibility of having an open textbook, faculty have so much more freedom to customize the resource, and faculty absolutely love that about these. And so I did want to touch quickly on student-led creation. So we have a fabulous adjunct in core Dr. Heather Maselli, and she wanted to know what an open textbook for non-majors written by non-majors would look like. So she teaches core science, and if any of you have ever had the pleasure of taking that course, I did, and I hated it. She, you know, there's no real textbook for a gen ed science class. And they cover, you know, broad learning outcomes. And so each professor is able to kind of tailor their course basically around their interests. And so Heather covers topics where science and society intersect. And so it's a really good way to engage the students in topics that they've probably very likely heard in the news, like vaccines, GMOs, space exploration, evolution, DNA. So she covers a lot of those topics. And so she had her students create websites. So again, OER can be things other than textbooks. She had her students create textbooks or websites that are openly licensed. And so each semester, there are different, you know, topics, like I mentioned, and students are put into groups and they all focus on a topic. And the website is openly licensed. So when those students leave at the end of the semester, you know, they've created this wonderful website, they leave it, and the new students that come in next semester, they take what the past students have started and they build upon it. They expand upon it, they improve upon it. They work very closely with me in the library to maybe improve the sources that were used. We work a lot on using openly licensed images and videos so that the resource is, you know, legal and both ethical, they're citing properly. And students love this project. And I just wanted to go in quickly and show you one of these. So this is the space exploration one, and it's from last semester. The one that's being worked on right now is not published. But you can see they're really like general. But again, this is a gen ed science class, and it really gets students interested. And these are learning resources that, you know, are easy to use, right? A student can come here and say, okay, I'm learning about this topic. They're short chunks of information. They're visually pleasing, right? And students are really proud of this work. And so usually at the end of the semester, obviously we won't be doing that this semester, but we have a really big gathering where students from past semesters come and see the work that the current students have done on their, you know, work that they did the previous semester. So it's a really cool experience. Students get to come and see how their own scholarship has been built upon and improved. And they really value that the work that they did wasn't just discarded at the end of the semester, right? A lot of times people will say, you know, I really like that class, but I hate that the work that I did, you know, just kind of ended up in the garbage can. Okay, so how much have we saved students in the last 4 years? We've saved students a lot of money, over $300,000. I'm really proud of that work. I'm really proud of the faculty who have committed to do this work. And we've been funding faculty very small stipends, you know, ranging from $500 to $1,500 to invest in this work. So the investment on, you know, behalf of the library and the provost's office has been really small financially, and the return on investment has been enormous for our students, and we're really proud about that. And just to kind of, you know, circle back on this whole equity piece, OER really does promote equity in the classroom. It removes those access barriers that many students have. You know, some students show up on the first day of class with the textbook because they can afford it. And some students don't get that textbook, you know, maybe for 2-3 weeks when their financial aid comes in, or maybe they never get it because they just can't afford it. But OER also really, you know, excites faculty because they're able to customize their resources and best support their student learning outcomes. Let's see. I'm freezing up here a bit.
But I have a question.
Yeah, what's the question?
So let's see, in the Q&A, it says, OER sounds fantastic. I'm fearful of the quality of the content. Is there a quality control in place to make sure that what's in them is correct and up to date? Or is it up to the user to find the inaccuracies?
Yeah, I would say that like any resource, it's up to the faculty member to vet the resource because there are really awful commercially published textbooks out there. I have seen them firsthand, and that's part of the faculty member's job to vet that. And so we kind of explain that to them. When we're talking about student created OER, yeah, absolutely. I think it's more on the user to kind of do their due diligence about who's creating the information, what's the agenda behind the information. I teach these things in my info lit classes to students all the time. You have to do your due diligence, but there are certain repositories that are peer reviewed. So you're more likely to find that higher quality material.
Thank you.
I hope that answered the question.
That's great. And I have another question.
Yeah.
Is there one place where alums could find resources, whether it's a list of subjects or Roger Williams OER resources, things that maybe could help high schoolers or other students?
Yeah, I have a LibGuide, which I can share in the chat. And I'm also in a couple slides, I'm going to show you a few resources that I think are pretty good repositories for those kinds of populations. So let me just kind of zoom through these. So we talk a lot at the university about building the university the world needs now. It's kind of like our buzzword. And I really feel like OER fits in here very well because the university the world needs now is one where students, all of our students, have equitable access to their learning materials on day one. And it's one where our faculty and students scholarship is contributed to the knowledge commons, right? Oftentimes faculty or students don't see themselves as authors or scholars. And this is a really good opportunity to kind of engage them in that process and empower them. And so this leads us to kind of our last part of the talk. And so I've kind of let you know what we're doing at the institution, but right now, we're all stuck at home, and a lot of us are homeschooling at the same time we're trying to work, or some of us might have free time on our hands and we want to engage ourselves in some kind of learning. So for I'd say for higher ed and even high school, these resources are pretty good. The Open Textbook Library, I'll just show you quickly. It's an interface. I'm going to try to put this in the chat for everyone. Let's see. I'll make sure to do it after. Can't figure it out right now. Here it is, sweet. Okay. Anyway, you can go here, you can Google Open Textbook Library. And this is an amazing, it's not a repository, they call it a referatory because all of the books that are in here, they're not like, they don't live in here. They link out to where the resource actually lives. But these are all free to use books. And they've been peer reviewed. You can read reviews of these by faculty who have actually used them in the class. Some of them are new, and so they don't have as many reviews. But this is a great place to look out. Also, OpenStax has some great AP review textbooks. So let me get here. So the OpenStax has some amazing textbooks, and they're all those kind of gen ed classes that most students have to take. But let's see, there's a little high school tab over here, which I can't get to. And so a lot of these are AP prep classes, so they might be helpful for those students. If you have younger, kids in your house or loved ones, I definitely recommend these resources. PhET simulations are so awesome. I've been using them with my son who's 5. And again, you can click on your age range, but these are all openly licensed resources, interactive simulations that allow students and kids to conceptually understand different concepts. So my son really loves this one, and everyone knows, when you rub the balloon on your sweater and static cling, and it's really interesting, like, how does that work? And it teaches them about electrons, and you can really kind of move everything around to see how the electrons are attracted. So these are produced out of the University of Colorado Boulder, I believe, and they have so many different ones. And it's a really good way to engage your student or yourself. Like, I've had fun playing with some of these. And there are so many different topics in the STEM area. So I definitely recommend checking those out. Khan Academy is great, Wide Open School. Playworks is really great. If you have little kids at home and you need different exercise games, like get some phys ed in there, and you can't, you're sick of playing tag. We've got some really good ideas in here. I've definitely checked this out for my own son. There's lots of different things out here. And I'd be happy to share the LibGuide link that I have most of these resources linked to.
Great.
That's pretty much the end of my talk. I'm happy to take more Q&A.
Great. I do have another question in here. It said in 2008, the printing industry was greatly impacted by the crisis during that time. Do you see today's crisis impacting other learning conditions? Especially, probably you'd see more of a need for OER, possibly, if the printing industry went down.
Yeah. So we have seen, this has been a really hard time for our students. Just thinking about it, Roger Williams, so many students are without their textbooks right now, whether they've left them in the dorm or they relied on the library to use the copy that we have. And OER can certainly relieve some of that. Like if the faculty member had, been using an OER textbook, the student would have it. But at the same time, OER can't solve everything. We have the digital divide, and not all of our students have the technology at home or the internet access at home to, access these resources. So these systems have to be kind of worked on together simultaneously. So I don't know if things will be similar to 2008. I think we have our own, different problems now.
Thank you. And OER, I know, changes year to year, and there's always something that you're working on, not only in the state, but also nationally. And so, in your opinion, in the next, say, 5 to 10 years, where do you see OER taking us?
Oh man, I mean, this I don't really want to call it a movement, but OER is growing exponentially. I know the 4 regional compacts in the United States, the New England Board of Higher Education is one of them. They have a grant right now through the Hewlett Foundation to build capacity nationally for this work. So I only see it growing. It's, K-12 has really embraced open educational resources. And I think higher ed is a little behind in that respect, but I think we're definitely catching up. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, this will be at least a term that everyone is very familiar with and supportive of. And I think it's really going to help a lot of students kind of level that playing field of a post-secondary education.
Great. And I see just a request, if you wouldn't mind later in the chat, or we can reach out separately. You talked about the peer review repository, and so there's a little interest in that. And also the slide where you had the resources listed for higher ed, if you could go back to show that one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, perfect.
I can't figure out, I don't think I have a chat box, or else I would put links in the chat box.
Do you see Q&A at the bottom?
I do.
You should be able to put it in there, but maybe, if not, we can follow up later.
I think if I stop sharing my screen, maybe I might be able to. Let me try that.
But those are all the questions I see right now.
Nice.
I know for me personally, just hearing what the university is doing for our students, but also some of these resources you shared for my own children has really been helpful. So I thank you so much for your session today. And I know it's always great to have our alums back presenting to fellow alums. So that's always a great feeling being here at the university. So I thank everyone for joining us today, and for Lindsey for presenting. And I just want to mention to keep an eye out for upcoming webinars. So we're having a few in the next few months coming up, and it's a range of topics. And so we hope that you'll join us again. But in the meantime, please stay healthy and safe, and reach out to the alumni office to stay connected. And if you need anything from us, we're certainly here for you. So I hope you stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan.
Lindsey.
Thanks, everyone.